morning, percent, morning, book, morning, percent, book, wine,
percent,
morning, morning, percent, point, percent, morning, percent,
white,
morning, wrote the 20 investigation.
You show the white percent,
Booked white,
book, white, book,
white, booked white, morning, book, white, morning,
a white percent,
morning,
white,
morning,
book, white,
booked white,
white,
morning,
white percent,
white, morning,
book,
book,
white, book, white,
morning, white, book,
white,
morning, booked white, book, morning,
white,
morning,
white percent,
percent,
morning, white, book,
white,
book, morning,
white,
book, morning,
percent, white, percent,
morning,
white,
morning,
percent,
morning,
white, book percent,
morning,
white,
book, morning,
morning,
book,
book,
morning, booked white, morning,
like
morning,
percent,
book, morning,
book.